So Tracy, welcome to the Labor Forum.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Great. So, okay. So what the heck is an archive?
Okay.
And what does a labor archive have?
So in general, an archives is a place where people donate rare and unique material for research. So when you go to the library, you typically are able to go and pull a book off the shelf or a magazine or some other kind of periodical, and that's a secondary resource. But in the archives we have primary resources, one-of-a-kind materials like correspondence, financial documents, we have reports and photographs, and we have one-of-a-kind audiovisual materials, so a variety of things that have not been published typically and that have not been mass-produced and widely distributed.
Okay, so that's what an archive is.
Just in general.
Yes,
but
now,
specifically
a labor archive.
So
a Southern labor archive.
So we were founded in 1971. We will turn 45 next year. A very young 45, if I may say so myself. And we were founded. The Labor Archives was founded in 1971. It was a collaboration between the History Department at Georgia State University, because that's where we're housed, and the local labor community to collect and preserve the history of work and workers in the South, or with a traditional relationship to the South. So we started bringing in materials related to, we have a lot of stuff related to Southern, or to labor unions in the Southern region, and we also have some non-union materials too. Like we've got amazing collections on nurses, and they have not necessarily been organized, but still I think deserve to have their work represented in archives where people can come and learn about their work as well. So lots of different types of unions.
All right, so if you were to give us some just anecdotal stories about something that's really cool, really special, really that would knock somebody's socks off if they saw it, what would that be?
Okay, so the labor collections really get their strength from context. So there might be a letter that doesn't seem that exciting, but when you put it in context with an entire folder of letters that sort of show the thinking leading up to a particular strike or some kind of movement, that's great. But we don't have, we don't have like a, for instance, at Georgia State University Library, we also have the music archives, and they have an Oscar. And nothing really compares to having an Oscar in the music collections at Georgia State University. It's the Oscar that Johnny Mercer won for writing Moon River in 1961. We have humble collections, but we have really amazing and wonderful collections. We have the records of PATCO, the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization, that Reagan fired over 12,000 people on August 3rd, 1981. We have the international, or rather the national records. We have the records of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, and actually that is truly an international collection. We have stuff from both the United States and Canada. Those materials aren't only limited to the South. We have the papers of Bill Ussery, who started as a machinist, went on to be the Secretary of Labor for President Ford, and went on to have a very successful mediation career after that. And he might best be known these days as the person who mediated the baseball strike in the 90s. And so the collections are very important for labor history, but
Well, Paul, you do labor history every week.
yes.
So, what would interest you about these archives?
Okay, well, I have a couple questions. One would be, who are the kind of people that come there? What kind of people need that material?
Okay, so we have had researchers who are working on dissertations or books come from as far as Japan and Russia and Australia to use our materials. So we've had people, because we are the only archives that have the particular material that they need to access. So people who are working on those kind of big projects, but then we also do a lot of outreach through faculty to different classes, both undergraduate and graduate. So people who are working on class projects, or they're writing term papers, or maybe working on their thesis, they also come and use our stuff too. So we have this very big scope, but also I think it's so important to also maintain lots of really good outreach on campus, so that instructors know that we're there for them. We do classes for history, of course, for English, for gender studies at Georgia State, for sociology, and for African American studies. So we really reach out to a variety of departments. But then we are, and this is the thing I always reiterate, is that we are also always there for the union. So if a union donates stuff to us, they are always not only welcome but encouraged to come back and use the material. And a great example of that is that ATU is having a 100th anniversary, and someone from there has been coming over to look at the records we have and putting your history together so you can celebrate the 100th anniversary. So we welcome, I mean, we're a public university. You don't have to have any kind of special permission. We're there Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and anyone that wants to come in and use our material is welcome.
I want to ask about pictures,
Okay.
because of a truism. A picture is worth 1,000
Oh,
words.
indeed.
And I have noticed that sometimes I see pictures that say that come from the archives. People may use them on a flyer. They may use them to advertise an awards dinner they're having or something like that. So how do you get the pictures, and how are they accessible?
So photographs are donated to us like any other part of a collection would be, whether it's letters or collective bargaining agreements or whatever else. And so a few years back, we started digitizing material, and we have an incredibly robust digitization program at Georgia State, not just for the labor archives, but for the other collecting areas as well. And so we attempt whenever possible to digitize photographs. I mean, we can't do everything at once, but making those available online, I think, is sort of the quickest way to get to the casual researcher, because you're right, they're so informative, and people really connect to visuals. And we have photographs that are clearly of labor union celebrating, or maybe like workers finally got back pay for something, you know, so these very wonderful and celebratory, but they also document the struggle, strikes, boycotts. We have photographs of two men who were trying to organize, I forget exactly where, but it was in a very rural area, and they were literally tarred and feathered by local folks who did not want the union. This is probably the 40s or 50s. And so there are photographs of the two men with the burns on their back and stuff like that from where they had been tarred and feathered. So, and then sometimes they're just boring photos of like signing a collective bargaining agreement. But that's still so important. It's still a very important document that goal was achieved by the union. So, and we have a great digital collection online. And you could just go into Google and type in Georgia State University Library, digital collections, and it'll come up, and you can go. We've got amazing stuff in there that's free to the public for anyone, anywhere with internet access to access, and you know, there's great stuff there. I encourage everyone, as soon as the program's over, go to your computer and start looking at our digital collections.
I want to ask a question because you know, we're a program that talks about labor issues all the time, and that's what our purpose is. Now, how recent would your collection come up to? I mean, do you have stuff from today, just like we have on our program every Monday is what's going on today in the labor movement?
So, people hear archives and they think of very, we were talking about this earlier, people think of
Dusty. Old,
yeah, and inaccessible, and sort of like a guardian at the gate, not letting anyone in. But we, you know, there are documents being created this week that may end up in our hands within the next couple of days or the next month or so. So we collect born digital material, and most of our collections are actually pretty modern. Most of our collecting material overall in the archives is post-World War II. So we don't have too much from the early 20th century, some things, but most of it is post-World War II. And yeah, we're always collecting, and everything's new, and so we have stuff as recent as 2015 in our collection. So.
I had another question just for you personally about what attracted you to this work in the first place, and has there been anything that you've learned from being around this material that you didn't know before?
Well, so I got my undergraduate degree at Georgia State University, and it is in art history with a minor in film theory and criticism. And when that very quickly was proving no immediate career, I had a lot of friends working at the University of Georgia Library, and they were like, "Well, come and work here. You'll have benefits. You can hang out in Athens." I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And I grew up near Athens, so I could be close to my parents too. And so as I worked in the library, and I never, while I was at UGA, I never worked with the special collections of materials, but I learned so much more about them, and it just really appealed to me. Sometimes people have a job because they need to pay bills, and sometimes people have a calling. So once I learned more and more about archives, it really felt more like a calling. And specifically, this collection, I've been in this job for 8 years now, and I can't adequately, I guess, describe how much I love my donors, how much I love my researchers, and how much I love the collections that we have. And I learn something new every day, and sometimes it's like, what's a hod carrier? Does anybody here know what a hod carrier? So
Wasn't it in the steel mills?
well, it was
You
people who
can't
carried
carry-
bricks around to like on a construction site.
Oh, that's
And
right.
maybe they had other things, but that's how I understand it. So there are all of these union jobs that we had earlier in the 20th century that we just don't have now because of technology. And so I learn about different kinds of jobs, the difference between the AFL and the CIO, like you were talking about earlier. So because I don't have a labor background, and so there's always something new I can learn about the collections, but also just about being an archivist, making decisions about specific types of things to bring in, or learning new technology to make things accessible. I'm always learning.
And what about the particular, can you put the South in context in terms of the labor movement, how the South was a particular area of interest?
Well, one thing that you mentioned earlier was the general strikes of 1934. But in the South, we had our own strike in the uprising of 34.
Mhm.
And the Congress of Industrial Organizations came into the South, and they tried to organize cotton mills, textile mills in the South in these very rural areas, and they worked so hard to do it. So as word got out to the folks who were to the company owners and things like that, they started to bring in company thugs, essentially, to rough up these rural people. Some of them had never had running water before they came to live in a mill village, or electricity. I mean, these jobs were just really appealing to these very, very poor people in so many ways, and gave them so many opportunities. But then the mill owners were just determined to squash any attempt to organize. There was a lot of violence, especially in South Carolina. And so in about 20 years ago, a documentary called The Uprising of 34 was released. Judith Helfand and George Stoney were the directors on that. And when the documentary was finished, it's an hour and a half long, but there's like closer to maybe 250, 300 hours of interviews. So we actually received a grant earlier this year to digitize all of that content.
Wow.
And we're going to be putting it online. It's
Wow.
just something we're very, very proud of.
So this is oral history.
It's interviews with different
Yeah.
people who worked in the mills, the children of people who worked in the mills, whose parents never talked about these horrible things that had happened because it devastated them so thoroughly. The children of mill owners are also interviewed. And so it's just this really phenomenal collection of material where we get to learn more about the strike, the people involved, and yeah, we're just incredibly proud to be putting
When
it
I was
on.
working in textiles, people talked about that strike like it was last week. You know, when the machine gun towers were on top of the mill, and it's like, wow, it's like, that's how fresh the memory was.
It devastated the people that
It was
lived through it.
traumatizing.
It did. It was. So, and so, perhaps because of that, however, you were talking about a larger context, as we all know, it's been historically more difficult to organize in the South. However, I feel like we have more labor unions than people think we do. And we can prove that with at the Southern Labor Archives with the great documentation that we have. Whenever I teach a class and they're like, oh, we don't have labor unions, I'm like, every time you see a MARTA bus or train, every time you walk into a Kroger, every time you see an AT&T truck, every time you see a Georgia Power truck, some guys out fixing lines, you're looking at union members. They're literally everywhere.
So I wanted to ask a question about who should donate to you, to the library, and also how do they do it?
Okay. Well, we are always looking to fill gaps in the collection. So if anyone approached us with something that really either helped make a more complete picture of a local or a type of work or something, or if they donate something that we just really don't have, those are the kinds of things we're looking for.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there could be somebody whose parents die, and they're going through their papers, and I don't know, they find pictures of a picket line, or they find pictures of their parents at some union event, or they, I don't know, is it worth it for that person to just, if they've only got a few things, I think when I hear the word collections, I hear, oh, you have to have boxes of stuff.
Oh, no, we have some collections. I think it would depend on if we can place something in the larger context. So if we got photographs of a strike that we maybe have documentation for, but no photographs for, of course, because that would be a great compliment. But but we have to know what it is. So if you also just find a box full of snapshots and you can't identify people and you don't know what the events were and you don't know where it took place and you don't even know what year it is, perhaps we would not accept that. But everyone, and some things really truly have more personal value to the family than they do historical value to researchers. But if somebody, I'll talk. Please ask your questions.
What about buttons? Do buttons?
We have if you go to our digital collections, let me plug that again, and you go to the Southern Labor Archives collection, in there you will find from the Joe Jacobs collection, I don't know if you guys remember Joe Jacobs, that we have digitized some of his buttons, and in fact our Labor Day, because we send out a Labor Day card every year, and we put a selection of his buttons, they were the cover of our Labor Day card this year, so yeah, but we want buttons and those beautiful early 20th century ribbons, like delegate ribbons that folks would wear to conferences and stuff. So beautiful, and we do have a great group of artifacts there. We don't have an Oscar, but we've got somebody, but who does? But we do have some really fun buttons and gorgeous, because the fringe on that, it's not fabric, it's like finely coiled metal, they're stunning to see one in person, the ribbons. So.
Okay, I'm going to go into some more things. What about strike signs?
We have strike signs.
Or join the union posters.
We have posters, we have strike signs, we have some OPEIU, I think, strike signs from maybe the 50s or 60s. We've got PATCO strike signs. So yeah, we've got strike signs and posters, and we have some people, when a local closes or maybe merges with another local, which does happen, they will send the charter to us. So we do have some really gorgeous charters in the collection. You name it. We have this one amazing donor who was a machinist that kept all these great satin jackets from all their Grand Lodge conventions, so we've got all these great satin jackets, and we've got, in another collection, for a while in the 80s, the machinists had a race car program. They were trying to reach out to younger members, and we've got one of the model race cars in the collection. Hey, maybe we do have stuff as cool as Oscar. I think I work there every day, and I forget sometimes. So, but another big component of the archives are oral history interviews, where we go into the community and we talk to labor leaders, and we give their personal stories to add to the archives as well. And we're hoping to start putting that content online next year.
Okay, well, Paul, do you have another question? Because I have one more and I don't want to dominate all the questions.
Okay,
Y'all have great questions too. This is awesome.
When some people talk about labor, they think about it's a class thing. It's the worker and the boss. But we know that workers are a very diverse group. So you have women, you have African Americans. So do you see those kind of threads come together in unions where an intersection between a labor fight and a civil rights fight or a women's struggle?
You know, I think that the labor movement and the civil rights movement were so closely intertwined for a long time, but it seems sometimes now that the civil rights movement has forgotten the labor rights movement, so depending on the time period of the collection that was donated, especially mid-century, there will be a lot of I don't want to say overlap, like there's majority civil rights stuff in there, but there will be enough of it in there. And in fact, the AFL-CIO had a Southern Civil Rights Department, and we have a lot of the records from them. So we actually have, gosh, probably close to 100 boxes, 75 to 100 boxes of material just out of that department alone. So there are some places where it's so obvious and it very clearly overlaps, and then there's some, and it depends on what's donated, right? Because sometimes people, the basement floods or the attic or the roof leaks or whatever, and they say, well, we've got part of it, but so much of it was lost. So it just, it depends on what is, what's able to be saved. But yeah, the collections from like the 50s through the 70s very clearly have this overlap of civil rights. And
we were just...
And women's rights too.
Like Reverend Orange, for example, was a person who had a foot in both.
Right.
So I'm sure there's people like that, and women too, who were active as activists in the women's movement who were also in unions.
And we have an oral history with Reverend Orange at the Southern Labor Archives, so if anyone is interested in hearing that or reading the transcript, just let me know. Come and visit.
Well, that leads us right into our last and final question.
Sure.
Which is, everybody, you've been hearing Traci Drummond, and she is with the Southern Labor Archives that's housed at Georgia State. So now, for many people, Georgia State is like, oh my God, I don't know where to go. So how do people find you, the archives, and go ahead and give the website information again and any other contact info, and also, do that.
Okay, so the library's web address is library.gsu.edu, and if you specifically want to go to the Southern Labor Archives page, it's library.gsu.edu/labor. And if you want to find our digital collections, go to the library's homepage and you'll see a little tab for search collections, and it'll open up a big box and you can click on digital collections there and start looking through. Or you could just Google Southern Labor Archives and it would take you right to our pages as well.
So can somebody just walk in the door and talk to you?
They can. If I'm there, I do travel a bit for work, but if I am there, I'm happy to talk to anyone. If they want to call or email first, certainly, if they aren't sure that we have what they're looking for, that might benefit them so they don't waste any time. But I'm certainly happy to talk to any folks. And we're not really a museum. I guess I don't want to be, I don't want to bum everybody out. But people hear archives, and sometimes they either think dusty and old, or they think museum setting. And we're not really like a labor history museum either. We have a small exhibit space, but it's not. It's not huge. So everything we have is safe in boxes, protected from light and dust, and and whenever you're ready to come look at stuff, we'll bring a box out to you and you can open it and pull out a folder and discover labor history. Some people think of archives as, not very active, kind of boring, but I sort of always think of it as like all of these voices, all of these stories just waiting to be heard, just waiting to have someone come in and discover them. So,
what a terrific way to end. Truly. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation with Traci Drummond from the Southern Labor Archives at Georgia State. And we should say that we are trying to figure out here at the Labor Forum how we can collaborate with the archives to try to take advantage of the enormous resources that are there, plus combine it with the current ongoing activists today. So please do always stay tuned on Mondays 4 to 5 here at WRFG for the Labor Forum. And of course, we have so many forms of ways for you to get in touch with us, and I'm going to read them all off. You can go to our website, and that's wrfglaborforum.org. How simple is that? And there you will also find how to get the links to our blog, our Facebook page, the YouTube channel. We certainly encourage you to encourage your friends to also like our page and share our videos, and certainly listen every Monday, 4 to 5 here at WRFG. So thank you again, Traci Drummond from Georgia State Labor Archives.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Traci.
Bye-bye, all. We'll be back again next Monday, as I said, 4 to 5. And we have a new co-host who we hope will be joining us next week. And I'm going to keep it a surprise.